Morning. Happy Sabbath. Today I'm going to address a subject that you maybe have thought about. Some of you may cringe when you hear the title. Some of you may be thankful that it's something that's being addressed head on. And the title is Seventh-day Adventist, Cult or Christian. Now, just by a show of hands, how many of you have heard somebody at some time say or assume that Seventh-day Adventists were a cult? Let me see your hands. Does that bother you? Well, it bothers me. There's a lot of misconceptions that float around out there. And, when I'm done today with some of the evidence we're going to explore, some people's minds may not be changed. Some may be more convinced than ever. It depends on your approach and how you define that word. And so maybe it would be appropriate to begin by looking at some definitions. Using Merriam-Webster's dictionary, even the Encarta dictionary that you could find with most Microsoft products, I began to find out what is the definition of a cult. And here's what I came up with. First of all, it comes from the word cultus, which is where we get the word cultivate. It's a religion or religious sect generally considered to be extremist or false. Now I want to pause right there. By whom? Are you aware that by this definition, agnostics believe that Christians are all a cult? And I'll show you from the Bible and history that there was a time when much of the world looked at all Christians as a cult, with its followers often living in an unconventional manner under the guidance of an authoritarian, charismatic leader. Now that's something we'll look at more carefully. Another definition, a system of religious beliefs and ritual, plus its body of adherents. A religion regarded as unorthodox or spurious. So we get some idea of what a cult is. I am not that concerned with the world's concept of a cult. It's in the context of what Christians define as a cult that would make me the most uncomfortable. First of all, just the word is an ugly word. I mean, if I close your eyes, if I say, oh, cult, what images are conjured up on your mental screen? I mean, I don't know about you, but I see people sacrificing chickens in front of a pentagram. Stuff like that. I mean, don't you get these spiritualistic, diabolical, people being mesmerized and hypnotized, and it's an ugly word. It's like the word yogurt. It just sounds bad, doesn't it? I don't know how anyone can eat something called yogurt. Some words just have that twang. The word bad doesn't sound as bad as the word wicked. Isn't that right? Wicked. Oh. Well, that's how the word cult sounds. It's just an ugly word. And when you say, yeah, they're part of a cult, that can mean a lot of different things to different people, so I thought we better talk about this. Now, you might want to know right from the start, what is the need for a denomination? There are so many different Christian denominations. The Christian church is probably just in North America got 500 to 600 registered denominations that some people would figure are mainstream or at least known. What is the purpose for that? At the infancy of the Seventh-day Adventist movement, they were strongly opposed to organizing. They believed that in order to be the Church of God, that they needed to avoid becoming a denomination. It's almost like incorporating. And then they just become another denomination. They wanted to be a movement because they were comprised of people from many different religious backgrounds. They wanted to be a Bible movement. But, it caused a lot of confusion. People would say, well, what church do you go to? And they'd say, I'm part of God's church. Okay, what do you believe? And they had to itemize all the different beliefs. It creates a lot of confusion. It became very difficult for them to hold property and to grow unless they organized. You and I have met people that say, well, I don't want to be part of any organized church. You know what they're really saying? Let me translate that for you. I want to be part of a disorganized church. You really only have a couple of choices. You can either be organized or disorganized. And so it was necessary to organize, and when you organize, you need a name under which you organize to be identified. That's where we get the word denominate, to name. But all these church names become very confusing. Now, how many of you have had someone say before, what church you go to? Well, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. Seventh-day Adventist. Oh, you're the ones that believe in multiple wives. Now, granted, there may be some in our church that believe that way, but that is not a belief of ours. People confuse the names. You get Latter-day Saints, which is Mormons, and Seventh-day Adventists, and you can understand. I've heard people get LBJ and LSD and LDS all mixed up. One is LSD, a hallucinogenic, one is a former president, and one is a church. I've met people before. Seventh-day Adventists, are you the ones that don't believe in blood transfusions? People, they get you confused. And this is what lends to some of the need for clarification. Sometimes we're found guilty through association. Let me tell you a little story. You can understand some of the reason that I felt it was important to address this. I was doing meetings with Karen in Reading. She was pregnant with Stephen. Must have been 10 and a half years ago. And right in the midst of our meetings, the whole Waco episode began to unfold. And it really was heartbreaking for me when I heard someone on the national news say a group of Seventh-day Adventists are holed up. They've shot some ATF agents, and they believe in multiple wives. And I thought, oh, no. And, right away, of course, the leaders of our church got on the phone. They called the media. They said, I don't know what they said, but they said something where they changed that, and they realized they were not Seventh-day Adventists. There were some Seventh-day Adventists that were there, but they were not Seventh-day Adventists. They were not even out of Seventh-day Adventists. They were out of a group called Shepherd's Rod that had come out of Seventh-day Adventists in the 30s. And they were so completely different in their views that you really couldn't fairly make an association. Let me illustrate. When Jim Jones became famous, did they say on the news, Methodist minister Jim Jones and a bunch of his followers have committed suicide down in Guyana? Do you know he used to be a Methodist minister? Would it be fair to call him a Methodist? Do Methodists believe what Jim Jones believed? No, people realized that that was an outrageous connection to make. And so I've been bothered by some of the connections that you hear. This guy, Marshall Applewhite, I forget, he was Episcopal or Presbyterian, but he used to be part of a church. When the Heaven's Gate people were all found and they committed suicide down there, did they say the Episcopal church people because they at once had some connection with that? And so the devil loves to capitalize on bad advertising and through association to try to slander God's work. Did they do that to the apostles? Did they do that to Jesus and Paul? And so don't fall for some of this. When you're going to find out what a church is, don't look at a couple of individuals, because you're going to find good and bad people in almost every religious movement. I have met some people that I've talked to that seemed very gracious and very kind, and then in talking to them I found out that they were part of some secret Nazi society. Well, I'm not going to assume that that's a good society because I met one nice person. I want to look at what they stand for. You with me? I have met some people who are members of my church and other churches, other denominations, that were just mean, ornery, unchristian people. You don't judge a whole denomination by different people. Even Jesus had a Judas in his group. Isn't that right? So you're going to find good and bad people everywhere. If you want to find out what it is, go to the foundational teachings of the organization and read for yourself. One thing I've discovered, I used to attend a number of Baptist churches when I was in Texas. The closest Seventh-day Adventist church was 70 miles away. And I would make the trip, but on Sundays, because I couldn't get to church for prayer meeting, it was too far away, I'd visit some of the area Baptist churches. And I know that from one Southern Baptist church to the next, there were incredibly diverse doctrinal views. And you could ask the typical Baptist, and many of them were not sure whether they believed in a post